What's up, guys and gals? Another day working on the Power Ranger. Kind of hate that nickname too, but every time I try to come up with a nickname for this thing, that's all I can think of is Power Ranger. Comes to them right to my head. So anyway, if you got any better nicknames for this thing, put them in the comments below. We'll check it out. I don't know, maybe once I get my hockey stripes on the side, maybe we'll just call it the Boss or something like that. No, today I got some presents for it. Some goodies. I want to install them. Shouldn't be too hard. I just got to make some mounting points for them. But basically, as you can see, went and bought the Banks iDash and DataMonster. These things, from what I can tell, are going to be exactly what I was looking for. I mean, just amazing. It can datalog. It can read pretty much anything the ECM is seeing. I was going to add some O2 sensors or O2 gauges to this. Actually, when I put the exhaust on this thing, I forgot to put some O2 bungs or weld-in O2 bungs, so now I don't have to do that. But this thing will, like I said, datalog, read O2 sensors. It'll have check engine light will come on there. I already have installed that Dakota Digital module, if you call it that, to run the check engine light, the one in the dash. I'll still leave it hooked up, but check engine light comes on down here, so that's hooked up. But I wouldn't have necessarily had to buy that module if I would have went with this right off the bat, because this just plugs right into the OBD2 port, which I have room for that, so it'll plug in. The other thing I wanted to see was I don't have a tach in this truck, so this will have a RPM on it, and basically you can read up to, I think, 40 data or 40 parameters at one time. Typically you could probably get away with one gauge, and I think there's up to 6 or 8 on the screen at one time, but I ended up getting the expansion gauge, so this would be the DataMonster and this would be the expansion gauge. Comes with a little jumper cable, basically plugs into this one, plugs into that one, and then the other end is for other items that I didn't get if you have more Banks products. But gonna get those mounted up. I ended up buying a couple of gauge pods to put them in. I'll show you what I was gonna do here. I had trying to figure out where I was gonna mount everything, but I think what I want to do is put them together as close as possible, kind of like that. But let me show you here in the truck real quick. All right, so I was trying to figure out exactly where I wanted to mount these gauges. It'll be kind of hard to show you here with one hand on the camera and one on the gauge here, but I'm going to put, like I said, put both gauges right next to each other. Originally, I was going to mount the gauges here. I couldn't find a gauge pod necessarily that fit perfectly for this, so that's why I bought those two small ones, but kind of wanted to mount them here and here. I don't know, they just kind of stick out, and you can kind of see them from the backside through the window. They're kind of in your line of sight, what you want that, but I don't know, they kind of seem bulkier, like they were added on or extra, so kind of decided away from this spot. I also kind of thought about sticking them up here in the corner. They're not as bad, and these gauges are actually pretty shallow. There's not much to them. You cut those mounting bolts off there, and you can get them pretty tight in an area if you want. You have the cable that's going to come off the back a little bit, but even up here, whoops, sorry, even up here, getting them mounted here wouldn't have been so bad. But then you have the mounting pod in there a little bit, and just kind of right there. I also thought I had a dash pod kind of out of a Mustang that went here, which I could have modified it to put them right here too, so then they both would have been right there. I didn't necessarily want it, just that extra bulkiness on the dash there. It wouldn't have looked bad, but I don't know, I kind of decided against it. I also had kind of thought about mounting each one kind of right in here and integrating it with those gauge pods that I bought, somehow modify the bezel here to kind of cut into the bezel here a little bit, almost like half of it kind of sticks out and the other half is in it, just so it's sucked in there. Let me see if I can switch hands here. So you'd still be able to see the other gauges, and they'd be right down here, nice and compact, tight, and out of the way. That would be a lot of work, and I don't know if I would have made them look nice, I guess. I think that everything would have fit fine, but it's a lot of kind of painting and sanding, and probably just to make it look like it's all one piece. And then the other issue to that, because I'd have one on that side, whoops, one on this side, but I showed you that jumper cable, and that's not long enough to go between the two of them if I space them apart. So you almost have to put these next to each other. My other option was to take this panel piece out here. This just clips in, this vent, and this, I think this is where four-wheel drive is on four-wheel drive trucks. But I could have easily mount them right here too. I'm deciding that would have been my first choice if I wouldn't already be planning something for that. I want to get rid of this radio and actually put a double DIN radio in here. So I'm going to make one big panel that goes all the way down and around here, and put that radio in here and kind of center it, so there'd be no room for the two gauges above it or anything, even if I dropped it all the way down. So I also had kind of thought about mounting them over here. That's not a bad spot either, but there again, I don't necessarily want to drill into the dash and stuff like that. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to mount them up here. Actually, I should be able to kind of cut them, the bolts down and the pods down, and mount them up there. They're close to each other. I, for the most part, just have my sunglasses hanging there. So, but I think I can angle them a little bit, and I can probably mount using this center bolt here, the trim piece. Just kind of stick it up in there, or I can kind of, self-adhesive tape and stick it to the ceiling there. But I think there's plenty of room here for both of them, and I should be able to get the wire to jump between them, and then I'll probably just stick the wiring that goes down to the OBD2 port along here, and then just run it down behind this trim pieces, and down here is where the OBD2 port is. So I think that's what we're going to do, and yeah, kind of just a matter of getting these two mounted up and close so they're not necessarily hanging way down or anything like that. I just kind of want them up there nice and tight and angled a little bit so I can see them, so they're kind of pointed right at me, and I think that'll work good. So, but no, I think it's really going to be nice having these two gauges in there, just so I can read all that, and then being able to data log all this stuff. Man, that's going to be awesome. And they have a free kind of app for watching or looking at the data logs, so it'll be interesting to check that out. But it should just be a matter of getting these kind of, you can see I already got a kind of a line drawn how much I want to cut them down. But these are just plastic, and we'll cut them down. These are little trim bezels that I was kind of messing around with, and these are the brackets that are on them, but I'm not going to use them, I don't think. So I should be able to do this and just make a little brackets off of here to clamp them right next to each other, and kind of like that. And they'll be staggered a little bit. One will be a little bit more because they'll be angled. But we'll get started on that. I'll get these cut down to where I want them, and then we'll kind of figure out how this will mount together and nice and tight, and we'll get it up in the truck. So. Okay, so I got the pods cut down. I got the bolts in the back of the gauges cut down. And this is basically how I want to try and put it in there, right next to each other like that, a little staggered. One issue I will have is that being they're so close and made them shorter inside of there, the wires have to fit in there. And this little jumper cable here that goes between the two of them is pretty bulky or stiff. So I'm going to have to actually cut this housing or this sheathing off the outside, just so the wires are more flexible. Because I just, they'll plug in no problem, but I don't want this hanging out the back and being able to see it, and I don't think I'll be able to tuck it up out of the way, decent the way it is. So I'll have to kind of cut all this open and off just so it's more flexible, and then I'm going to see if I can stuff as much as I can inside the housings. So now we just kind of need to make a little bracket here to mount it. I may need to take this clamp here and move it back, but I'm trying to just see if this will be staggered enough to where I like it. Otherwise I'm going to have to make something that'll move this one even further back on this side so the angle is right. So we'll get that next here. All right, you can see I have these kind of mounted up in here. I'll turn this here, but I made a little Z bracket instead of using these clamps. You know, at first I was going to kind of mount the clamps together, something similar to that, to kind of mount them. But I decided against that. I'll still be using them just to hold the gauges in, but made the little Z bracket here, mounted it right to the housing, and then I made this plate and just a couple tabs there and bolted basically everything together. So then now the gauges will fit in there. They're offset like I want them to be. Like I said, I'll put the ring around there just to kind of clamp it together. Next, I do have to kind of slot this because that's where that bolt is in the center of the trim on the windshield there. So I'm just going to cut a slot in there, and then we should be able to try this and see how it sits in there. And then otherwise, kind of just a matter of getting that painted and then mounting the gauges in there. Right, I think that'll work just fine. I got them just sitting up in here for now. Angle's pretty good. They're facing right at the driver. You can see it's just kind of wedged between the trim there, and it's mounted pretty solid. I don't really get any wiggle out of it, so we'll have to sneak the wires in through here somehow. I don't know if I'll have to notch this a little bit on top here just so it's not pinching the wires, but that shouldn't be too difficult. And otherwise, I think that'll work perfect. So I would have almost liked to have made a housing around here that's sealed to the roof, almost like a center console on the roof here, but that's a lot more work too. Maybe in the future we'll update that, but I think for now that'll be fine. I should be able to get the wires kind of stuffed in behind here, and the little jumper cable, and then the other one's just going to run down and like that down to the OBD2 port, and they should be working. Alright, so I got part of the sheathing or outside layer cut off of this little jumper, and I wasn't really expecting it to be like this inside here, but basically there's one little wire in here on each one. Looks to be kind of somewhat of a ground or shielding wire, but maybe can't see it real well. But right before it goes into that little shielding area here, it turns to bare wires, so the outside layer of this little black wire gets cut off, and it's just bare wire inside here. Then you have aluminum foil, and then basically this wire on the outside of that. So I'm not sure if they do that for some sort of shielding purpose or ground or what, but it kind of messes with how I wanted to do it. So it's still going to be not quite as stiff. I think what I'll end up doing is just put electrical tape over this so it's still a lot more flexible. I'll cut that one off too and just tape both of them, and we should be okay. But yeah, I was kind of hoping that that wasn't going to be in there. It'd be a lot more loose, but we'll get it to work here. Okay, everything's painted, kind of back together, got it packaged up. Got the wiring in here nice and tight so you can't really see it when it's up there. The only thing is you'll see the cord come off to the one side that plugs in here yet, so we'll get that installed in the truck next year. There we go, all installed. For these gauges to come on, they have it so when the engine is running, then they'll come on. You can get them to come on and go through the parameters with just the key on, but you have to kind of press and hold the button for a second or two. But otherwise, every time you start the engine up, they'll come on. So you can see I got a few parameters there. I got the RPMs, I got kind of the throttle and the air fuel ratio over here, engine coolant temp, we got air intake air temp, and then I got this will tell me what gear I'm in and what gear is commanded. I got kind of tranny slip and then battery voltage. but there's a lot of other parameters you can set, so it's pretty good. But yeah, I think I like them. So that'll do it for this video, guys. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.